What if the life you're so carefully building is actually a prison designed by someone else? Today, I want to tell you about Madelene, a woman who woke up at 47 and realized she'd been living a lie for 3 decades. And what she did next, nobody saw coming. At 24, Madelene was a dentist. Her father had planned it all, calling it a stable and honorable career. But he never asked if it made her happy. Secretly, Madelene dreamed of fashion design, sketching clothes she'd never make. Then she met Richard, a charming executive her father adored. He promised her freedom, but his version meant she'd stop working to become the perfect wife. Tired of fighting, she agreed. At 26, Madelene hung up her dental coat and silenced her own dreams. For the next 2 decades, she built a perfect life for everyone but herself. Stay tuned to see what happens when the perfect life shatters. That night, Madelene did something she hadn't done in 17 years. She pulled out her old sketchbooks from a box in the attic. The pages were yellowed, the dreams inside ancient. But as her fingers traced the design she'd drawn as a young woman, something extraordinary happened. She started crying. Not soft tears, harsh body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere primal. She cried for the girl who'd been told her dreams were impractical. She cried for the woman who'd traded herself for approval. She cried for 21 years of slow suffocation. And then, in the wreckage of that breakdown, she made a decision that would detonate her entire life. There's a moment in every trapped person's life where they have to choose: stay comfortable and die slowly, or risk everything and finally breathe. Madelene was standing at that crossroads, but what she did next, nobody could have predicted. When Richard returned from Singapore, Madelene was waiting at the kitchen table. No dinner prepared, no warm greeting, just papers, divorce papers. "What is this?" Richard's voice was ice. "Is there someone else?" "Yes," Madelene said, her voice steadier than she'd expected. "Me. There's me. And I've been a stranger for too long." The fight that followed was biblical. Richard couldn't comprehend it. She had everything: security, status, a beautiful home. What more did she want? "I want to remember what it feels like to be alive," she said. "I want to chase my own dream before I'm too old to run." "Fashion design." Richard laughed, cruel and sharp. "You're 47 years old, Madelene. That ship sailed decades ago. You're having some kind of crisis. You need therapy, not a divorce." But she'd already made her choice. Her father's reaction was worse. He showed up at her house, face purple with rage. "I paid for your education, I gave you every advantage, and you're throwing it all away for what? To play with fabric?" "No, Dad," she said, and her voice carried a strength that surprised them both. "I'm finally stopping playing. I'm finally going to live." He left without another word. He wouldn't speak to her for 2 years. Only Emma understood. Her daughter, now 24, held her mother's hands across a coffee shop table and said, "Mom, I've been waiting my whole life for you to wake up. Go, chase it. I'll be here." Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing in the hurricane of everyone's disappointment and choosing yourself anyway. But courage doesn't pay bills. And that's where Madelene's real battle began. At 47, with no recent work experience, Madelene discovered a brutal truth. Nobody wants to hire a middle-aged woman starting over. She applied to fashion companies, retail stores, design studios. 53 applications, 53 rejections. "We're looking for someone with more current experience. We need someone who can grow with the company." Translation: someone younger. "You're overqualified." Translation: you're too old. She burned through her divorce settlement faster than expected. The small apartment she'd rented felt like both freedom and failure. Some nights, lying on an air mattress because she couldn't afford furniture yet, she wondered if Richard had been right, if this was just a crisis, if she'd destroyed her life for nothing. But then, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, scrolling through social media in her dark apartment, she found something unexpected. Other women. Women in their 40s, 50s, 60s who'd also walked away from comfortable cages. Women who'd started businesses, changed careers, reinvented themselves. They weren't in fashion magazines or business journals. They were on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, building communities, sharing struggles, celebrating small victories. Madelene started posting her designs. Not polished, not professional, just honest sketches with captions about starting over, about being scared, about being too old and doing it anyway. The response was electric. Women flooded her comments with their own stories. I'm 52 and just enrolled in culinary school. I'm 44 and learning to code. I'm 38 and leaving a marriage where I was invisible. Within 3 months, Madelene had 15,000 followers, women who saw themselves in her story. And then came the message that changed everything. Sometimes your breakthrough doesn't look like you imagined. Sometimes it comes from the last place you'd expect. For Madelene, it came from a woman named Patricia, a 61-year-old investor who'd also started over at midlife. And she had a proposition that would either save Madelene or destroy her. Patricia's email was direct. I've been following your journey. I want to invest in you. Not your designs, though they're beautiful. I want to invest in your story. Let's build something together. They met at a cafe. Patricia, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, laid out a vision, a fashion company designed for and by women starting over. Not fast fashion, not luxury, but clothing that celebrated bodies that had lived, survived, transformed. Every design you create should tell a story about resilience, Patricia said. We'll hire women who nobody else will hire. Women over 40, women rebuilding after divorce, women starting fresh. We'll create clothes for women who've finally chosen themselves. Madelene felt something she hadn't felt in decades. Possibility. But there was a catch. I'll invest $200,000, Patricia said. But I need you to go back to your father. Make peace. Not for him, for you. Because whatever you build, you need to build it whole. Not carrying that anger. Not proving anything to him. Just free. It was the hardest thing Madelene had ever done. She sat across from her father in his living room, a room she'd been afraid of as a child, where his disappointment had shaped her like a sculptor shapes clay. I didn't come for your approval, she said quietly. I came to tell you, I forgive you. For not seeing me. For projecting your dreams onto me. And I came to tell you, I forgive myself. For letting you. Her father didn't apologize, but his eyes filled with tears he'd never shed before. And when she left, something had shifted. Not reconciliation, but release. The company launched 6 months later. Phoenix Threads, clothing for women rising. The first collection sold out in 48 hours, but here's the twist nobody saw coming. Madelene didn't keep the profits. She created a fund, a grant program for women over 40 starting new careers. She hired women nobody else would hire. She built a company where age was an asset, where starting over was celebrated, where every employee was living proof that it's never too late. 3 years later, Phoenix Threads was a multi-million-dollar company. But more importantly, it had helped 847 women restart their lives. Emma worked as the company's creative director. Even James, who'd initially sided with his father, came around, impressed by his mother's business acumen. And Richard? He reached out 2 years after the divorce. Not to reconcile romantically, but to apologize. I kept you in a box, he said. I thought I was giving you security. I didn't realize I was taking your oxygen. Here's what Madelene's story teaches us. And this is the part you need to hear with your whole soul. Your life is not a rehearsal for someone else's show. Every day you spend building someone else's dream is a day your own dream suffocates. Every year you invest in becoming who others need you to be is a year your true self fades. And here's the hardest truth. The people who love you might be the ones most invested in your cage. Not because they're cruel, but because your transformation requires them to question their own choices. When you start choosing yourself, you give others permission to do the same. And that's terrifying for people still locked in their own prisons. Starting over at 47, 52, 63, 71, it's not too late. It's just late enough that you finally have the wisdom to build something authentic. The question isn't, am I too old? The question is, am I willing to spend the rest of my life wondering? Your soul knows what it was made for. That persistent whisper you keep ignoring? That's not a fantasy. That's not impractical. That's your life trying to remind you who you were before the world told you who to be. Stop chasing others' dreams. They were never meant to fit you. They'll always feel like borrowed clothes, uncomfortable, constricting, wrong. Chase the dream that makes your hands shake with excitement, not fear. Chase the dream that makes you forget to eat lunch because you're so absorbed. Chase the dream that feels like coming home to yourself. Yes, people will be disappointed. Yes, it will be hard. Yes, you'll have moments where you wonder if you made a mistake, but I promise you this. The regret of trying and failing is nothing compared to the soul death of never trying at all. Madelene didn't succeed because she was fearless. She succeeded because she was finally more afraid of dying without living than she was of failing while trying. Conclusion. So now I'm asking you, what dream have you been suffocating? What version of yourself has been locked away because it wasn't practical or realistic? Drop a comment below, and if this story moved something in you, if Madelene's courage sparked something in your chest, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Because I share stories like this every week. Stories about real people who chose themselves when everyone said they shouldn't. Stories about the messy, terrifying, beautiful process of becoming who you actually are.